What's going on, everyone? Jimmy Lee Velez coming at you live from Scott-Free DeVore's office in the beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. And we are here to give you all a origin story of Scott-Free DeVore, how he got started with everything, where he currently is. So welcome to the page. Scott, let him know.
Yeah, so like Jimmy Lee said, origin story, just really to give some background of who I am as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, go through a few areas of my life from humble beginnings to college to becoming a corporate person for 15 years to a climatic moment when I decided to go all in as an entrepreneur, starting off as a solopreneur, and then kind of 7 years from there to where I'm at now to building a multi-million-dollar company.
Fantastic. So let's jump right in. Scott, let us know about your humble beginnings.
I would say my humble beginnings actually starts a little bit before me with my mom. So
Okay.
my mom is from Vietnam. She immigrated here at the end of the Vietnam War in the 70s. She met my dad, and I was born in 79. So I'm a Gen X, and basically from my early childhood, I spent it in the southeast part of the U.S. I was in coastal South Carolina. Hilton Head is where I first lived. I lived in Charleston and Savannah, where I went to kindergarten. My dad, who's from Western Maryland, he was working as a chef, and he bounced around from a few restaurants in those cities I just named. And he got to a point in his life where he wanted to move back home to Western Maryland. So as I was finishing up kindergarten, he put me, my brother, my sister, and my mom were in a moving truck, and we moved to Western Maryland, where I spent basically the rest of my formative years. So I'm half Asian, as I mentioned. My mom's from Vietnam, and kind of was an outsider, didn't really know where I fit in. And shortly after moving to Maryland, my parents divorced about 3 years afterwards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my mom's from Vietnam. She didn't have any formal education, and unfortunately, with that, we moved to the projects. So I spent a good part of my childhood from that point on in the projects on government assistance. And my mom, being the strong person she is, didn't want to be in that lifestyle forever. So she eventually went to work when me and my brother were a little bit older, where we could take care of our stuff. So a couple things happened at that point. I was basically running the streets at 10, 11 years old, growing up in the projects, getting in trouble and things like that. I was still a good kid. I was getting good grades because my mom and her family, she was adopted in Vietnam, and she had some brothers and sisters who were educated. They were becoming doctors and lawyers and things like that. So she basically raised me and my brother and sister, go to school, get an education, and that's a good path for having a good life, making a career and all that.
Sure.
So I pretty much followed that path. Back in high school, I played a lot of basketball, and I was really into hip hop music. So when I was an early teen, we had like a mixer because we did like karaoke and stuff as a family. So I had a mixer, CD players, just came out. So I learned how to mix beats, and I was making mixtapes, and that was kind of like my first real like side hustle.
Yeah.
Was as a DJ making mixtapes. I didn't sell a lot of them, but I love the art of DJing, and I had a lot of passion for it. When it was time to graduate, I wanted to play Division I basketball. So I have an older brother who is he's a lot bigger than me. I'm only 5'9". He was like half a foot taller than me. He had a bunch of D1 looks. He ended up loving this Division III school that he went to, and he became an all-conference player there. But because him and I were real competitive, I wanted to outdo him. So I'm like, all right, I want to play D1. So I went the path that a lot of people go, playing JUCO. So being in Western Maryland, it has a really good junior college program for basketball. We were highly ranked at the time. So I pursued that for a bit. College basketball didn't work out, but I basically finished up there, got an associate's degree in business. Then I actually transferred to the same school my brother went to, a little small school called Washington College on the eastern shore of Maryland. And that's really where my DJ career was at its height.
Okay.
So I was there DJing a lot, making a lot of money, because there was no other DJs even in the area.
Right.
And I basically kind of finished out my college career making money, as a DJ and playing a little bit of ball. Wasn't playing. I wasn't playing with the team anymore, and then I basically graduated.
Yeah. So one of the cool stories you shared with me on the side was how you got your name Scott-Free. So explain a little bit about that, and then how you also incorporated into the whole DJ thing.
Yeah. So I mentioned growing up in the projects, basically project kids are getting in trouble, misbehaving, and I was no different from that. Eventually we would do things and we'd get caught, like me and my homies would, do little petty things.
Sure.
But fortunate for me, I never got in any real serious trouble as a youth. So I always got off scot-free. And so I just liked how that kind of sounded together. And when it was time to pick a DJ name, when I started to promote myself and get gigs, it just came natural to be DJ Scott Free. So that's how it came about.
I love it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about college, the influence of, I guess, basketball being competitive with your sibling, and then what happened after college. So what happened to the basketball career, and then how you transitioned to a professional.
Yeah, so I mentioned I started off playing JUCO. I was a red shirt coming in. I was one of the local kids, and my first 2 years of junior college, I went to Hagerstown Community College. It was Division I talent, and a lot of D1 guys go there because they don't have the SAT score or the grades to actually go right into a Division I, like like a major program. So that was kind of the height of my skill level, was playing against that every day. I thought I was really good, but there's only so many spots on a team, and the coach basically said, hey, you got a red shirt, and then what that means, if you're not familiar, just basically practice with the team. You're not allowed to play in any games. It didn't really work out the way I wanted to, because I wasn't doing everything like going to study halls and all that nature, and as I mentioned, I was DJing.
Yeah.
So DJing was something I was making money. So
yeah.
I was living on my own, paying my own bills, working another job, and then my DJ gigs was like that extra money I needed just to really get by. So that became more important to me at that point in my life, to just focus on DJing, let the basketball go, and I kind of pursued that. I tell people I retired as a DJ the day I graduated college.
Okay.
And I say that because I was being told, hey, it's time to become a professional, get a real job. The DJ thing is, it's fun, it's cool or whatever, but it's not really a career to pursue like long term. So my heart is in like music and hip hop and all that, and I reluctantly listened to that. And not that it was a bad decision; it was actually a really good decision, because when I graduated, I was very fortunate to within just a few weeks land a really highly coveted job with one of the top companies in the area.
High school, college, basketball, the end of an era with the DJ gigs. Now you're in corporate America. So let's talk about your 15-year corporate climbing career as a professional. How'd you get started in that, and your experience?
When I finished up with my undergrad, it was like my second business degree. So I have a business management, and I got a job with one of the largest companies in the world. It's a $50 billion a year engineering construction company.
Okay.
So when I got hired there, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
I was just so naive of what a job there meant. So my first few weeks, I didn't do a whole lot. They put me in a cubicle, and I just had a computer. So with a business management degree, I did have a lot of experience with spreadsheets and doing analysis. Well, one day a manager came up to me and they said, hey, Scott, do you want to go to Texas? There's a project that we're doing. So they build power plants, like billion-dollar power plants. Do you want to go to this project in Texas? They're having problems. One of the main finance or cost engineer guys, my title was a cost engineer. He was having some problems, and they needed someone to come in there and help out the project management team. And so I was like, sure, I'll go. So I go to Texas. I never really was blue collar, grew up around construction. I was just, again, I was foreign to corporate stuff. I was foreign to construction.
Right.
So I go out there, there's like 500 people working on this job site, and we're building this massive power plant. So I knew how to analyze numbers. So, we were, affectionately called bean counters. So I was a bean counter, and I quickly figured out, where we were underperforming as a project, and I kind of got us back on track financially, where we knew where we were with the budget, how much we spent, and if we were going to be able to be profitable at the end. So that gave me the opportunity to actually make a name for myself. I got promoted quickly, and then I left that project, went to another billion-dollar construction project in another state, and then they put me on another billion-dollar construction project after that. And for a few years, I was making six figures right out of school. Kind of got burnt out initially with the corporate grind.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of this rat race. So I was working 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, working a 10-hour Saturday and an 8-hour Sunday. My now wife, we got engaged, we were dating long distance, and I didn't want to continue in that lifestyle, as I was getting married, because I thought that's not the way to live a life to build a family. From there I transitioned. I looked for a job in DC, because she was in the DC area going to a local university, and I got on with another engineering construction firm in DC. I was there for a few years, quickly rose up the ladder there. Now I'm married, buying a house. I was 23 years old when I bought my first house in 2003. So I was getting into real estate, And if you guys remember, that's when the last cycle real estate where everything grew and then the market fell out. I was pretty fortunate at that time to jump in the market early enough, and then I sold my first house like soon enough. So I actually profited a ton of money.
Wow.
So I learned something about real estate early on. And in that time, I actually got introduced to some side hustles that I started pursuing. Like I got introduced to a network marketing business that I built for about 5 years. And what I'll say about that is it taught me a lot of entrepreneurial foundational things that I didn't learn in school. I didn't have family or friends teaching me any of this. And it kind of opened my eyes to what entrepreneurship truly is, leadership, personal development, growing myself as a person. Because I was a natural introvert. And to build a business like that, you have to build a team of people for it to be successful. And I didn't really have a lot of people who I knew initially who would want to do something like that. So I had to learn a skill that was foreign to me of, building, talking to, strangers and building relationships with them, introducing them to an opportunity. And then I built a large team I built it heavy for about 5 or 6 years where I got to the point of speaking on stage weekly, speaking in front of thousands of people. And, I made decent money on it. It was a great kind of phase in my life where I learned a lot about business, but I was doing it all outside of my corporate job. So I worked my corporate job 40 hours a week, and then outside of it, I'm putting another 20, 30 hours building a business to make, the goal was to make passive income.
So the entrepreneurial spirit seemed to have been embedded in you from the get-go.
Yeah.
And then you tapped into it when doing the DJ stuff, then you were at your corporate jobs and your career's going, however, you have these side hustles going. Talk a little bit about what the mindset is when you're working 80, hour weeks on the corporate side of things, but then also doing the side hustle. And then when were you starting to think about that transition?
I think my entrepreneurial journey started when I was actually a kid. Like when my parents were together, they're both phenomenal cooks, and I wanted them to open a restaurant together. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. My parents divorced. But after my parents divorced, my dad remarried. But then they opened up a couple of restaurants themselves.
Okay.
So I didn't really have a relationship with my dad at that point, but I was actually proud from afar that he actually did it.
Yeah.
And then my granddad, he was entrepreneurial as well. He was famous in my hometown for building floats that are in parades. You can look them up. It's a pretty crazy story. But so I think I kind of got a little bit of that in my genes. When I started learning about entrepreneurship, and I got introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, like the OG Robert Kiyosaki, and he talked about in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad and cash flow quadrant and those things. And as I'm getting this education on what entrepreneurship is, I'm like, I want to be on that side of the quadrant, the BI quadrant, the big business, the investor side.
Yeah.
I want to get out of the employee self-employed quadrant, because that's like trading hours for dollars, and then on the other side of the quadrant is where you create like residual passive income. So that's where I wanted to be.
Okay, so how did you make the jump to solopreneur?
Yeah, so from the DC job, I worked at 7 years in aerospace, did the same thing again, started there, quickly rose up. I helped them win billions of dollars in government contracts. Then I had a short stint at the time, and so I got into real estate investing at the time as well. So I started to buy a lot of homes. I was fixing, flipping, becoming a landlord. So I stopped really the network marketing type thing, even though I was still building from the personal development side, educating myself, becoming a better, entrepreneur, just in mindset and things like that. End up in LA. I'm working in healthcare, and I'm like 35 years old at this point. And so 15 years in, made a ton of money, climbed up the ranks. On paper, people will look at that like, hey, you've had a really good career.
Sure.
But inside of me, I knew I'm just an entrepreneur, and I wanted to, my whole goal was, and I told, like, even when I graduated college and I was getting married, I told my wife, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to work 10 years for a company, learn skills, and then I'm going to start a business. Like, I don't know what it is. So even way before I even knew I was going to be on this journey, that's what I told myself, and I was, telling my wife at the time. So now I'm 15 years in. Looking at other people who kind of made that leap to become full-time entrepreneur, I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Sure.
So I was kind of in a very unique role in LA, working in like finance, but also working in construction and real estate. And I'm like, I got all these experiences in finance, operations, project management. I worked in all these industries: construction, engineering, aerospace, healthcare. I feel like I had a skill set where I can become a consultant and help a lot of people. And I'm thinking I can help entrepreneurs because I was very passionate just about entrepreneurship in general. So I came to a climatic point where I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in. So I was living in LA where it's extremely expensive. And I basically became a corporate dropout. So I got rid of lost all my salary to go full time as an entrepreneur. And in that transition,
That's going all in.
yeah, I moved to another state across the country.
So you're going from LA here
to Jacksonville, right? Bought a house bought a house here in Jacksonville, sight unseen, and moved to a county that has a really good school district. So I got young kids now at this time, and I'm all in. Now I'm a solopreneur.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's put all together your experience here at Jacksonville, and it brings you to present day. You're now running a multi-million-dollar company in the same city that you decided to go all in. So you go from the East Coast to West Coast, back to East Coast.
Yeah.
So explain where we are here.
Well, a lot of it had to do with family. Like, my wife and I are both from Maryland. Being born in the Southeast, in South Carolina, Jacksonville was like on the radar. And my mom actually moved to Jacksonville my freshman year in college. So I knew it was a great city because I visited for many, many times over a couple decades before I actually, decided to move here myself. For entrepreneurship, it was extremely affordable at the time. It still is relatively affordable. A lot has changed in the 7 years I've been here. But initially I was just I say solopreneur because I was just a consultant by myself. I had no office, I had no employees, it was just me. Okay. So I was just finding companies who could use my skills in operations, finance, project management, bid and proposals, and I picked up clients right away. And I started helping my clients win a lot of projects. Like I was helping them win $1 million contracts.
Wow.
Well, something in that process, in that journey, made me think, you know what, I have all the backgrounds to do this myself if I wanted to build my own construction company, because a lot of my customers were other smaller contractors. So with my background being what it was, I decided I'm going to go get my general contractor's license in Florida. So I got my GC license, which is extremely hard to do. It has like a fail rate of like 70% of people who take it, and wow. I passed it. I studied for like 2 months. I'm doing the consulting work, but then I'm like, I'm going to get this GC license because I felt like that GC license had so much value to it.
Right.
And so the GC license I have, I can pretty much build anything in the state. I can build airports, I can build skyscrapers, I can build bridges, I can even build power plants with it. So I got the GC license, and then I just started to build a construction company. Through that, being a GC, I was using, so I also have what's called a PMP credential. It's a project management professional. It's a very hard credential to get. So I'm a professional project manager. I know how to manage projects, scope, schedule, budget. I'm really good at it. So I decided, so when I was doing GC jobs, project management that's my expert service, but I would sub out all the different trades to other contractors. Okay. And through that, I've realized there were a couple trades that seem to be the best ones to be in, and one in particular is roofing. Okay. So roofing, so I would do a whole project. Let's say if it takes me a year, I would have to sub out the plumbing work to a plumber, sub out the electrical work to an electrician, sub out the roof to a roofer, HVAC to a mechanical, yada, yada, yada. Sure. Well, these roofers I would hire, they basically come in and they would put a roof on in a day and they'd be done. They make all their money and they're like, hey man, appreciate the job, see you later. And I'm like, man, that roofer, he had the easiest part. And not that the work is easy by any means. Sure. There's definitely skill to being a roofer. Right on. So I told myself, you know what, I have roofing experience too. I'm going to get my roofing license as well. So that was a game changer for me in the company. So a lot of what we do as a company is primarily centered around roofing. So I got the roofing license. I ended up getting my real estate broker's license as well. Wow. We're a developer. So I went from solopreneur, just me, to 7 years later to a multi-million-dollar, multi-service company. So we do development, we do roofing, general contracting, consulting, government contracting, and a number of other things.
I love it. So this is the origin story. However, we want to end this bad boy in where would you like to go in the next 5 years?
So I'm a Gen X, I'm mid-40s, a lot younger than what I truly am. And I love entrepreneurship, as I've been saying through and through in this whole talk. So I'm very, very attracted to online digital marketing and people who actually build a footprint online. So where I've actually dropped the ball, and I'm just kind of fully disclosing this, is I feel like the company would be 100 times bigger if I would have just grasped digital marketing, talked about the services of the company, but also talk about the services or me as a person and a personal brand. So this is really just a kind of the intro origin story for me to kind of put myself out there, let people know about who I am as a person. You know, maybe there's some relatability, maybe you got a little bit of inspiration, perhaps, but just to know about me, know about the company and the services we offer, and that there's more content, you know, coming down the pike.
That's right, and you know, we're going to wrap this episode up here. However, Scott, as I know, in conversation, we wanted to get in further detail with each of these topics. So keep a lookout for additional content coming from Scott. But we want to, you know, post this origin story so you all get that background to get to see where he came from and where he's headed. So thank you for tuning in, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Your office on the 9th floor in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, is fantastic.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, take care.